I am. 1:30 on the dot. None of that running behind nonsense today. Booyah! Yeah. Let there be light. Woo! Hi. That's so bright, I'm actually turning it down. I have a bonnet. Are you there yet? You're not there yet, guys. Where are you, man? Oh, wait, I see people. I see people. There's the kids. Hi. Yes, it's Alison, and I'm in the living room again. We have another show tonight. Yes, we're doing the Saturday night show in the living room over there. And we just did sound check, and everything worked. So it's like, finally, we're gonna manage it. Hair is crazy. I colored it again. It's very, very blonde. I kind of like it. Hot rollers tonight. We'll see how crazy my hair gets. Bonnet on. So what do we have today? Well, today is the 16th already. I can't believe 16th. Yes, honor our LGBT Elders Day. Hey, a shout out to Robin Tyler. She's probably not watching. I'm going to call her later then. Barbecue Day. Do something good for your neighbor day. Oh, that's a good day. We should make every day do something good for your neighbor day. It's National Love a Tree Day. It's, National Mimosa Day. Need to pick up some champagne. National Piercing Day. Well, my ears, I pierced it, so it's like it. It's National Sea Monkey Day. Did you ever see monkeys when you were a kid? I bought the sea monkey. They never worked. It was terrible. National Biographers Day. National Coquille Saint-Jacques Day. Also known as scallops. National Armed Forces Day. Yay. And National Learn to Swim Day. Do you know how to swim? Does everyone know how to swim? Gotta learn how to swim, man. It's really important because, you could fall in or something. I don't know how to ride a horse, but I do know how to swim. I actually do know how to swim. It's amazing. So I have with me for snack, I have a cup of tea. It's my Disney kids. It's a big unicorn. It's almost famous. I have my unicorn. Yeah, bonjour. And we have our book. We're doing By the Shores of Silver Lake. And we have goldfish. Those goldfish. They're addictive. And just a couple more of those cookies that I made yesterday because they're awesome. Okay. Can I speak Italian? No, Italian. Buongiorno. Do I know any Italian? Fettuccine, linguine. I know all the food. Cannoli. Spumoni. That's my Italian. Yeah. Ciao. No, I have English. I speak English. I speak some French. Well, okay, a lot of French. Smattering. I can count in Spanish, kind of. I mean, it's a teeny tiny bit, but I'm working on Spanish. So, now it's going to get exciting because today's chapter is horse thieves. Remember? Okay, so they were riding across the prairie. The Ingalls, they were to South Dakota. All this stuff about a homestead. But of course, Pa still hasn't picked out a house. No. They're still living in shacks and surveyors' cabins and tents and shanties. Lots of shanties. Very, very uncomfortable stuff. So, they're in this place, and they're rough. It's railroad town, and all these rough people. And they run into this guy, and these two guys ride up behind them, and Caroline's like, we're going to be robbed. This is absolutely horrifying. And they're scared. And then Pa's like, oh, hi. And he knows them. Was it Big Jim? Big somebody. That's his little friend. And he's like, oh, no, he's fine. Yeah, he's totally a horse thief and a mugger, but he's not going to mug us. Caroline's like, so, again, ta-da, criminals, horse thieves. This little house in the prairie, but they are now in crime land where bad things happen. Horse thieves. One night at supper, Pa spoke hardly at all. He only answered questions. At last, Ma asked, aren't you feeling well, Charles? Because Charles is quite chatty. Charles is quite the chatty Cathy, and he's always talking and singing and telling jokes and playing the fiddle. And he's not. He's being weird. I'm all right, Caroline, Pa answered. Then what is the matter? Ma demanded. Nothing, Pa said. Nothing to worry you about. Well, the fact is, the boys have got word to look out for horse thieves tonight. That's High's affair, Ma said. I hope you'll let him tend to it. She's like, she doesn't want him on horse thief patrol because it's not safe. Yeah, he's like, no, it's fine, except for the horse thieves. Don't worry, Caroline, Pa said. Laura and Carrie looked at each other and then at Ma. After a moment, Ma said gently, I wish you'd out with it, Charles. Big Jerry's been in camp. That's it, Big Jerry, he's his friend. These two guys are like following them on horseback when they're in their wagon, and clearly they are horse thieves and muggers, and he's like, oh, it's just Big Jerry. Hey, Jerry. And it's only because it's Jerry that they don't rob them. Big Jerry's been in camp, Pa said. He's been here a week, and now he's gone. The boys say he's in with the gang of horse thieves. They say every time Big Jerry visits a camp, the best horses are stolen after he leaves. They think he stays just long enough to pick out the best teams and find out what stalls they're in, and then he comes back with his gang in the night and gets away with them in the dark. In other words, Jerry is casing the joint. Big Jerry comes in to the town, and he cases the joint and then tells the guys to come and what to steal. That's bad. Big Jerry is not a nice person. You should not be hanging out with him, Charles. I'm sorry, that's terrible. I always heard, you can't trust a half-breed, Ma said. Oh, no. Ma's on her I hate Indians kick again. This gets a half-breed. Oh, Lord. She's calling people half-breed again. Ma did not like Indians. She did not even like half-Indians. But Pa, see, here you go. Once again, does Laura agree with her? No, she does not. Because Pa says, well, we'd have all been scalped down on the Verdigris River if it hadn't been for a full-blood, said Pa. We wouldn't have been in any danger of scalping if it hadn't been for those howling savages, says Ma, with fresh skunk skins around their middles. And she made a sound that came from remembering how the skunk skins smell. Woo! I don't think Jerry steals horses, Pa said. But Laura thought he said it as if he hoped that saying it would make it so. It's sad. Pa likes his friend Jerry, but he's kind of an enabler. He kind of knows that Jerry is a horse thief and things are bad, but he's going, yeah, Jerry's a nice guy. No. Very sad. The real trouble is he comes into camp after payday and wins all the boys' money playing poker. That's why some of them would be glad to shoot him. Now Pa raises a good point. If this is in fact true, that Jerry's a bit of a card shop, as they used to say in the old days, that Jerry's just winning all their money at the poker game, then they're saying he's a horse thief because they're mad at him for taking money. But, I don't know. I think Jerry's a horse thief. Jerry hangs out with thieves. The Jerry is a criminal, sadly. Hangs out with very, very criminal people. And he just happens to like Charles. So he and his mucker friend didn't murder them and take all their stuff. It's not good. Very sad. And yes, Ma hates Indians and is racist, but Laura and Pa are not. So that's the whole thing. People go like, Flora Ingle's racist? No, Ma. Ma hates everyone. Yes, Ma does. Ma does not like Indians. And but then Laura and Charles and all these people keep going, no, Ma, no. Native Americans are good. So they argue about it all the time. But this Jerry guy, trouble. I wonder if High allows it, said Ma. If there's anything as bad as drink, it's gambling. They don't have to gamble if they don't want to, Caroline, Pa said. If Jerry wins their money, it's their own fault. There never was a kinder-hearted man than Big Jerry. He'd give the shirt off his back. Look how he takes care of old Johnny. I think Jerry would give the shirt off someone else's back, but there you go. That's so, Ma admitted. Old Johnny was the water boss. He was a little, wizened, bent-backed old Irishman. Okay, and now we're going to be racist toward Irish people. Okay, charming. He had worked on railroads all his life, and now he was too old to work. So the company had given him the job of carrying water to the men. Every morning, and again after dinner, little old Johnny came to the well to fill up his two large wooden water pails. When they were full, he he set his wooden yoke across his shoulders, and stooping, he hooked into the 2 hooks that hung from where short chains at each end of the yoke. Then with a grunt and a groan, he straightened up. Oh, terrible. The chains lifted the heavy pails to the ground, and Johnny steadied them with his hands while he bore their weight on his shoulders. He trotted under the weight with short, stiff steps. There was a tin dipper in each water pail. When he got to the men working on the grade, Johnny would trot along the line of work so that any thirsty man could help himself to a drink of water without stopping work. Johnny was so old that he was little, stooped, and shrunken. His face was a mass of wrinkles, but his blue eyes twinkled cheerily, and he always trotted as quickly as he could so that no thirsty man need wait for a drink. Now, some people might suggest that perhaps Jerry should retire, since he is clearly old and ill and disabled. Or perhaps he could be on, disability, because he is handicapped at this point, injured and crippled and elderly. It's the 1870s. There's no disability. There's no Social Security. There's nothing. So the really, really old guy, who's in no condition to work at all, who sounds like he has probably like spinal stenosis and arthritis and Lord knows what else, is hobbling around with a giant yoke, with giant heavy water pails, so that he doesn't, starve. So, yes, the 1870s. Oh, gosh, what fun they were. This sounds terrible. They treat his poor... But as they said, it's sort of not like a regular person. He's an Irishman. It's just terrible. Terrible. Poor old man. So, poor guy with the tin dippers and his bike. So, Johnny was so old. Oh, my God. One morning before breakfast, Big Jerry had come to the door and told Ma that old Johnny had been sick all night. At least he had Big Jerry, the thief criminal man, to take care of him. He's so little and old, ma'am, Big Jerry said. The meals at the boarding shanty don't agree with him. And would you give him a cup of hot tea and a bit of breakfast? Oh. Ma put several of her hot, light biscuits on a plate, and beside them she put a fried mashed potato cake and a slice of crisply fried salt pork. Potato pancakes! Mashed potato cake. She made potato pancakes, or hash browns, kind of, mashed brown, and biscuits. We know we love biscuits. And then salt pork. Bleh. And then she filled a little tin pail with hot tea and gave it all to Big Jerry. I have hot tea today. It's really, really, really good. It's green tea with mint. It's amazing. Poor Big Jerry. Poor guy. So she gives it to Big Jerry. After breakfast, Pa went to the bunkhouse to see old Johnny. And later, he told Ma that Jerry had taken care of the poor man all night. Johnny had said that Jerry even spread his own blanket over him to keep him warm and gone without any covering himself in the cold. So nobody else could spare blankets for the elderly, handicapped, arthritic Irishman. They're just like, yeah, get your yoke on. Bring the water. Harsh. Cruel. He couldn't take better care of his own father than he did of old Johnny, Pa said. And for that matter, Caroline, I don't know, but we're beholden to him ourselves. They all remembered how Big Jerry had come out of the prairie on his white horse when the strange man was following them and the sun was setting. Well, yeah, I mean, he was a mugger, and the other guy was his friend, a mugger, but who was really bummed out that Jerry wouldn't let him rob them. Well, Pa said, getting up slowly, I've got to go sell the boys the ammunition for their guns. Wait, what? Remember, Pa makes bullets. He was always making bullets in the other book. And now he's in the store. He runs the store, and he has to go sell the boys ammunition for their guns. So because they're going to be drinking and gambling, I guess there's going to be some shooting. How nice. I hope Jerry doesn't come back to camp tonight. If he just rode up to see how old Johnny is, rode up to the stable to put his horse in, they'd shoot him. Oh, no, Charles. Surely they wouldn't do that, Ma exclaimed. Pa pulled on his hat. The one that's doing most of the talking's already killed one man, he said. He got off easy on a plea of self-defense. but he served a term in state prison. Wait, this is Little House on the Prairie. What just happened? Suddenly it's Breaking Bad or something here. And Big Jerry cleaned him out last payday. He hasn't got the nerve to face Big Jerry, but he'll bushwhack him if he gets the chance. This is now turning into a scary murder mystery. So, Big Jerry may be a thief, but some of the other men are killers and have killed people. How lovely. Now, he's working in the store. He's going to go sell them ammunition, which might not be a good idea. They're ready to kill a horse thief, and Big Jerry just won all of the murderer guy's money. Pa went to the store, and Ma soberly began to clear the table. While Laura washed the dishes, she thought of Big Jerry and his white horse. She had seen them many times, galloping over the brown prairie. Big Jerry always wore a bright red shirt, and he was always bareheaded, and his white horse never wore a strap. The night was dark when Pa came from the store. He said that 6 men with loaded guns were lying in wait around the stable. It was bedtime. There was not a light in the camp. The dark shanties now, low against the land, could hardly be seen. Only if you knew where to look, you could see them darker in the dark. There was a little sunshine, a little starshine on Silver Lake, and all around it stretched the black prairie, flat under the velvet dark sky, sparkling with stars. The wind whispered cold in the dark, and the grass rustled as if it were afraid. Laura looked and listened and hurried, shivering, into the shanty again. Behind the curtain, Grace was sleeping, and Ma was helping Mary and Carrie to bed. Pa had hung up his hat and sat down on the bench, but he was not taking off his boots. He looked up when Laura came in, and then he got up and put on his coat. He buttoned it all the way up and turned up the collar so his gray shirt did not show. Laura did not say a word. Pa put on his hat. "Where's he going?" "Don't sit up for me, Caroline," he said cheerfully. "I'm going out to see the gun people." Ma came from behind the curtain, but Pa was gone. She went to the doorway and looked out. Pa had disappeared into the darkness. After a minute, Ma turned around and said, "Bedtime, Laura." "Please, Ma, let me stay up too," Laura begged. "I believe I won't go to bed," said Ma. "Not for a while, anyway. I'm not sleepy. It's no use to go to bed when you're not sleepy." "I'm not sleepy, Ma," Laura said. Ma turned down the lamp and blew it out. She sat down in the hickory rocker that Pa had made for her in Indian Territory. Laura went softly on her bare feet across the ground and sat close to Ma. They sat in the dark, listening. Laura could hear a thin, faint humming in her ears. It seemed to be the sound of her listening. Because, it's out on the prairie. It's like deathly quiet, unless they start shooting. She could hear Ma's breathing, and the slow breathing of Grace asleep, and the faster breathing of Mary and Carrie lying awake behind the curtain. Yeah, they're not sleeping either. The curtain made a faint sound, moving a little in the air from the open doorway. Outside the doorway, there was an oblong of sky and stars above the faraway edge of dark land. Oh, they have the door open. It's going to be horse thieves and shooting, but they have the door open. I don't know. Out there, the wind sighed, the grass rustled, and there was the tiny, ceaseless sound of little waves lapping on the lake shore. A sharp cry in the dark, oh no, jerked all through Laura. She almost screamed. It was only the call of a wild goose lost from its flock. Honk! Wild geese answered in it from the slough, and a quacking of sleeping ducks rose. Honk, honk! Quack, 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 quack. "Ma, let me go out and find Pa," Laura whispered. "Be quiet," Ma answered. "You couldn't find Pa, and he doesn't want you to. Be quiet and let Pa take care of himself." "I want to do something. I'd rather do something," Laura said. "So would I," said Ma. In the dark, her hand began softly to stroke Laura's head. "The sun and the wind are drying your hair, Laura," Ma said. "You must brush it more. You must brush your hair 100 strokes every night before you go to bed." "Yes, Ma," Laura whispered. Well, that was the idea. You brushed your hair, like people brush their hair 300 strokes. It would get the oil from your scalp going through your hair, which before we had conditioner, Tide conditioner. Well, your hair could get very dried out, so you use all the brushing. I had lovely long hair when your pa and I were married, Ma said. I could sit on the braids. She did not say any more. She went on stroking Laura's rough hair while they listened for the sound of shooting. But Ma on the show, she had very long hair on the show. It wasn't real. Wig. The fall. On the show, we all had, and I had a full wig, but even the ladies didn't have full wigs. They had, like, extra hair, like a bun or a fall, so that they had, like, super duper long hair that they didn't really have. Waiting for the sound of shooting. How nice. There was not one shining large star by the black edge of the doorway. As time went on, it moved. There was it was a star. Slowly it moved from east to west, and more slowly till the smaller stars wheeled about it. I think Laura's hallucinating again. She does this when she's half asleep. Suddenly, Laura and Ma heard footsteps, and in an instant, the stars were blotted out. Pa was in the doorway. Laura jumped up, but Ma only went limp in the chair. Sitting up, Caroline, Pa said. Pshaw, you didn't need to do that. Everything's all right. How do you know that, Pa? Laura asked. How do you know Big Jerry? Never mind, Flutterbudget. Pa stopped her cheerfully. Big Jerry's all right. He won't be coming into camp tonight. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if he rode in this morning on his white horse. Now go to bed. Let's get what sleep we can before sunrise. Then Pa's great laugh rang out like bells. There'll be a sleepy bunch of men working on the grade today. We're all up waiting for Jerry. While Laura was undressing behind the curtain and Pa was taking off his boots on the other side of it, she heard him say in a low voice to Ma, The best of it is, Caroline, there'll never be a horse stolen from Silver Lake Camp. Sure enough, early that morning, Laura saw Big Jerry riding by the shanty on his white horse. He hailed Pa at the store, and Pa waved to him. Then Big Jerry and the white horse galloped on and away toward where the men were working. There never was a horse stolen from Silver Lake Camp. Pa made a deal. So Jerry, because they knew Jerry was in with the guys, and the horse thieves always came after he left. But Pa was friends with Jerry, and Pa went out. And suddenly, the horse thieves don't show up, and he says, no horses will ever be stolen. And then it's like, hi, Jerry. What did Pa do? What did he offer Jerry? What did he tell him? How did he convince Jerry, don't steal any horses from here? What scheme did Pa have? Did he pay him? Did he make some bargain? I don't know. It's amazing. I don't know. All right. We have time today because my sound check went well, and the show's not too late, so yay. Some people talking, I don't know. Somebody's saying I'm having trouble getting tickets. I don't know. The website is weird. Play with the website. Go on Twitter and message Stage It and tell them, because I don't know. Hey, you should have seen me last week trying to log on to do the show, let alone buy tickets. So, eek, shriek, I don't know. And yes, I did eat the whole box, the big box of goldfish. I have a little bag of goldfish, so I have a little tiny bowl of them now. Liberty gibbet. All right, I'm going to read you the wonderful afternoon. So you are going to get two today, because I actually have time. Tomorrow, though, might be tight, but one of her so. Early every morning, while Laura washed the breakfast dishes, she could look through the open door and see the men leaving the boarding shanty and going to the thatched stable for their horses. Then there was a rattling of harness and confusion of talking and shouts, and the men and teams went out to the job, leaving quietness behind them. All sorts of chaos there. There's less drawings in this one, and they're all like weird drawings of rail yards and stuff, so all the days went by, one like another. On Mondays, Laura helped Ma do the washing and bring in the clean, scented clothes that dried quickly in the wind and sunshine. On Tuesdays, she sprinkled them and helped Ma iron them. On Wednesday, she did her task of mending and sewing. She did not like to. Monday, this is the way we wash the clothes, we wash the clothes all on a Monday morning. This is the way we iron the clothes. They're doing it. Mary was learning to sew without seeing. That's hard. People do it, but it's really hard. Her sensitive fingers could hem nicely, and she could sew quilt patches if the colors were matched for her. That was the thing, because she knew how to sew so well that later she did go to blind school. She was able to like sew and make stuff, which is very clever, especially when you cannot see. I can see and I can't make a quilt, for heaven's sake. At noon, the camp was noisy again, with all the teams and the men coming in to dinner. Then Pa came from the store, and they all ate in the little shanty with the wind blowing against it and the wide prairie outside the door. Softly colored in all shades from dark brown to russet and tan, the prairie rolled in gentle swells to the far edge of the sky. Adjust my thing. There, I'm adjusting the thing. There, that's better. Oh, look, I can see. Ha 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 ha. I'm turning into Blind Mary here if I keep reading in the dark. The winds were blowing colder at night. More and more wild birds were flying southward, and Pa said that winter would not be long in coming. But Laura did not think about winter. Oh, yeah, well, Laura, who never knows what month it is, but winter is coming. She wanted to know where the men were working and how they made a railroad grade. Every morning they went out, and at noon and night they came back, but all that she saw of working was a smudge of dust that came up from the tawny prairie in the west. She wanted to see the men building the railroad. Aunt Dosha moved into the camp one day, and she brought 2 cows. Oh boy, cows. She said, "I brought our milk on the hoof, Charles. It's the only way to get any out here where there aren't any farmers." One of the cows was for Pa. She was a pretty, bright red cow named Ellen. Pa untied her from the back of Aunt Dosha's wagon. Back to Dosha's wagon and handed the halter rope to Laura. "Here, Laura," he said, "you're old enough to take care of her. Take her out where the grass is good and be sure to drive down the picket pin good and firm." Laura and Lena, oh, Lena's here, yeah, that's right, picketed the cows not far apart in good grass. Every morning and every evening they met to take care of the cows. They led them to drink from the lake and moved the picket pins to fresh grass, and then they did the milking. And while they milked, they sang. It's this Lena girl and the crazy songs. Lena knew many new songs, and Laura learned them quickly. Together, when the milk streamed into the bright tin pails, they sang. Now remember, Lena was teaching her naughty songs when they were out riding. A life on the ocean wave, a home on the rolling deep. The pollywogs wag their tails, and the tears roll down their cheeks. What? Okay. Sometimes Lena sang softly, and so did Laura. "Oh, I wouldn't marry a farmer, he's always in the dirt. I'd rather marry a railroad man who wears a striped shirt." Yeah, she's obsessed with railroad men. But Laura liked the waltz songs best. She loved the broom song, though they had to sing broom so many times to make the tune swing. Buy a broom, buy a broom, broom, buy a broom, broom, buy a broom, broom. Seriously, that's what it says. Will you buy of this wandering Bavarian a broom? Would you buy of this wandering Bavarian a broom? Yeah, have you ever heard of this song? I have never heard of this song. Okay. To brush off the insects that come to annoy you, you'll find it quite useful by night and by day. I have no idea. The cows stood quiet, chewing their cuds as though they were listening to the singing until the milking was done. Poor cows. Then, with the pails of warm, sweet-smelling milk, Laura and Lena walked back toward the shanties. In the mornings, the men were coming out of the bunkhouses, washing in the basins on the bench by the door, and combing their hair. And the sun was rising over Silver Lake. Sunrise. They go out at dark. Oh, Laura's going to watch that sunrise again, and she's going to talk about it for like 20 minutes. Let's see. In the evenings, the sky flamed with red and purple and gold. The sun had set, and the teams and the men were coming in, dark along the dusty road they had worn on the prairie, and singing. And quickly, Lena hurried to Aunt Dosha's shanty and Laura to Ma's, because they must strain the milk before the cream began to rise and help get supper. Milk, and real fresh milk. The cream rises, strain. Oh, what fun. Lena had so much work to do helping Aunt Dosha and Cousin Louisa that she had no time to play. And Laura, though she did not work so hard, was busy enough. They had hardly ever met except at milking time, and so the singing and milking. If Pa hadn't put our black ponies to work on the grade, Lena said one evening, you know what I'd do? No, what? Laura said. Well, if I could get away, and if we had the ponies to ride, we'd go see the men working, said Lena. Don't you want to? Lena is trouble, I know she is. Yes, I want to, Laura said. She did not have to decide whether or not she would disobey Pa, because they couldn't do it anyway. Suddenly, one day at dinner, Pa set down his teacup, wiped his mustache, and said, You ask too many questions, Flutterbudget. Put on your bonnet and come up to the store along about 2 o'clock. I'll take you out and let you see for yourself. Oh, Pa! Laura cried out. There, Laura, don't get so excited, Ma said quietly. Laura knew she should not shout. She kept her voice low. Pa, can Lena go too? Well, we will decide about that later, said Ma. After Pa had gone back to the store, Ma talked seriously to Laura. This railroad men discussion. She said that she wanted her girls to know how to behave, to speak nicely in low voices and have gentle manners and always be ladies. They had always lived in wild, rough places, except for a little while at Plum Creek, and now they were in a rough railroad camp, and it would be some time before this country was civilized. Until then, Ma thought it best that they keep themselves to themselves. She wanted Laura to stay away from the camp and not get acquainted with any of the rough men there. It would be all right for her to go quietly with Pa to see the work this once, but she must be well behaved and ladylike, and remember that a lady never did anything that could attract attention. And you know what she means. She means attention from scary menfolk. Now, that Lena girl, Lena, clearly, well, she did. She wants to marry a railroad man eventually. So Laura's all about, what could go wrong? She's very brave. And Lena's all about, hey, there's hot, shirtless guys working the railroad. And Laura's into that, but Ma's like, because she knows that in real life, and when you read, like, the writings of Laura, where she writes about as an adult in her book, the whole Prairie Girl thing, Pa and Ma, they're not just like, well, you'll pick up bad habits if you hang out with the railroadmen, and you might hear swearing. We know perfectly well what it is. They're concerned about assault. These are railroad men. Some of them drink. Some of them, as they said, are in fact people who've been in prison and are criminals. One guy killed a guy. There are men there, and these are now young girls. Remember, Laura's like 13. How old's Mary? 15? And blind. And little Carrie. These are very pretty little teenage girls. And these are men who've been in prison. And they're not saying what necessarily all of them have been in for. And they're really, like, scary. And they might, in fact, actually assault one of these girls. They are not above that. And that's made quite plain. And they're just kind of shilly-shallying around it because it's, by the shores of Silver Lake. But that's totally why Ma's going, no, not railroad men. Yeah, because they know it's actually totally dangerous. But there you go. So she's saying, be ladylike. Yes, Ma, Laura said. And Laura, I do not want you to take Lena, said Ma. Lena is a good, capable girl, but she is boisterous, and Dosha has not curbed her as much as she might. If you must go where those rough men are working in the dirt, then go quietly with your Pa and come back quietly and say no more about it. You may go see the potential sexual assault, awful, terrible men if you take your father with you. Don't go with crazy Lena, who doesn't know any better and is like going to go running amok with the railroad men because her mother didn't tell her that it was dangerous. Totally what's happening. So there you go. Got a point. Yes, Ma, Laura said, but what, Laura? Said Ma. Nothing, said Laura. I don't know why you want to go anyway, Mary wondered. It's much nicer here in the shanty or taking a little walk by the lake. I just want to. I want to see them building a railroad, Laura said. She tied on her sunbonnet, when she set out and resolved to keep it tied on. Pa was alone in the store. He put on his broad-brimmed hat and padlocked the door, and they went out on the prairie together. At that time of day, there were no shadows. The prairie looked level, but it was not. In the few minutes its swells hid the shanties, and on the grassy land there was nothing to be seen but the dusty track of the road and the railroad grade beside it. Against the sky ahead rose up the smudge of dust blowing away on the wind. Pa held on to his hat. Hold on to your hat. And Laura bent her head in the flapping sunbonnet, and they trudged along together for some time. Then Pa stopped and said, "There you are, Half-Pint." They were standing on a little rise of the land. Before them, the railroad grade ended bluntly. In front of it, men with teams and plows were plowing onward toward the west, breaking a wide strip of the prairie sod. Breaking up sod and building America, the railroad, yes. Do they do it with plows? Laura said. It seemed strange to her to think that men with plows went ahead into this country that had never been plowed to build a railroad. "And scrapers," said Pa. "Now watch, Laura." Between the plowing and the blunt end of the grade, teams and men were going slowly around in a circle over the end of the grade back to cross the plowed strip. The teams were pulling wide, deep shovels. These were the scrapers, for plowing and scraping and scraping. Instead of one long shovel handle, each scraper had two short handles, and a strong half hoop of steel curved from one side of the scraper to the other. The team was hitched to this curve of steel. It's almost like a weed whacker, but it's, yeah. When a man and his team came to the plowed land, another man took hold of the scraper handles and held them just high enough to thrust the round shovel point into the loose earth of the plowed ground, while the team went on and earth filled the scraper. Then he let go of the handles, and the full scraper sat level on the ground, and the horses pulled it on around the circle up the side of the grade. Complicated. On the grade's blunt end, the men who drove the team caught hold of the scraper's handles and tipped the whole scraper over in a somersault inside the curving steel that the horses were hitched to. All the dirt was left right there, while the team drew the empty scraper down the grade and on around the circle to the plowed land again. Then the other men caught hold of the handles and held them just high enough to thrust the round shovel point to loose earth till the scraper filled again. She just said that. She literally just said that. There's an entire 2 sentences. It's like just complete identical reprint. Somersaulting over yet again. Team after team came around the circle. Scraper after scraper tipped over. They're just scraping up dirt. This is like 5 paragraphs, by the way, about moving dirt. I'm just saying. The teams never stopped coming, and scrapers never stopped filling and tipping. As the loose soil was scraped from the plowed land, the curve widened out, so the scrapers passed over freshly plowed ground ahead, while the plowed teams came back and plowed again the ground that had been scraped. Wait, so they plowed it, and then they scraped it, and then they plowed it some more. I give up. Okay. "It all goes like clockwork," said Pa. "See, no one stands still, no one hurries. When one scraper's filled, another one is in the spot to take its place, and the scraper holder is there to grab the handles and fill it. The scrapers never have to wait for the plows, and the plows just go so far ahead before they come back to plow again the ground that has been scraped. They're doing great work. Fred is a good boss." Fred? We haven't mentioned Fred. Fred just like appears out of nowhere. Suddenly, or is it Fred? Here comes Fred. Fred stood on the dump, watching the teams and scrapers circling, and the plows coming around the inside of the circle and moving out ahead of it again. He watched the dumping of the scrapers and the dirt rolling down, and with a nod or a word, he told each driver when to dump his scraper so the grade would be even and straight and level. And even and straight. For every 6 teams, one man did nothing but stand and watch. If a team slowed, he spoke to the driver and he drove faster. If a team went too fast, he spoke to the driver and that driver held his horses back. Like a timekeeper kind of thing. The teams must be spaced evenly while they kept on going steadily around the circle over the plowed land to the grade and over it and back to the plowed land again. How many times have we said that now? Okay. 30 teams and 30 scrapers. Okay, that's a lot. And all the 4 horse teams and the plows and all the drivers and all the scraper holders all were going round and round, all in their places and all moving in time, there on the open prairie, just like the works of a clock, as Pod said. And on the prow of the new railroad grade in the dust, Fred the boss stood there, kept it all going. Laura would never have tired of watching that. But farther west, there was more to see, Pa said. Come along, Half Pint, and see how they make a cut and fill. So, Laura is a construction nerd. That's like... I mean, I can get into that, but yeah, people, construction nerds who want to watch the cranes and the whole construction and stuff. Laura would totally stand there and go, oh, great. Construction nerd. So, now we're going to make a cut and fill. Oh, boy. Laura walked with Pa along the wagon track, where the crushed dead grasses were like broken hay in the dust where wagon wheels had passed. Farther to the west, beyond a little rise of the prairie, more men were building another piece of the railroad grade. In the little dip beyond the rise, they were making a fill, and farther on, they were making a cut through higher ground. A cut and a fill, a cut and a fill. You see, Laura, Pa said, where the ground is low, they make the grade higher, and where the ground is high, they cut through it to make the grade level. A railroad roadbed has to be as level as can be for the trains to run. Right, you're gonna have a train coming through, so that you can't have it can't be like a road you drive on that does this. They have to, when they hit a bump, cut it down, and when it goes in the valley, fill it up so that the train can just go. That's building a railroad is all about. Why, Pa? Laura asked. Well, why can't the trains just run over the prairie swell? Woo woo! Be a train going like that. That'd be a cartoon train. No. There were no real hills, and it seemed a waste of hard work to cut through all the little rises and fill in all the little hollows just to make the roadbed level. No, it saves work later on, Pa said. You ought to be able to see that, Laura, without being told. Laura could see that a level road would save work for the horses, but a locomotive was an iron horse that never got tired. Yes, but it burns coal, said Pa. Coal has to be mined, and that's work. An engine burns less coal running on a level than it does going up and down grades. So you see, it takes more work and costs more money now to make a level grade, but later on, there'll be a saving in work and money, so they'll be used for building something else. What, Pa? What else? Laura asked. More railroads, said Pa. I wouldn't wonder if you'll live to see a time, Laura, when pretty nearly everybody will ride on railroads, and there'll hardly be a covered wagon left. Laura Ingalls Wilder lived to fly on a plane. She flew on jets. My. Laura could not imagine a country with so many railroads, nor one so rich that nearly everybody could ride on trains. But she did not really try to imagine it, because now they had come to the high ground where they could see the men working at the cut and the fill. Right across the prairie swell, where the trains would run, the teams with plows and teams with scrapers were cutting a wide ditch. Back and forth went the big teams, pulling the plows. Round and round went the teams, hauling the scrapers, all steadily moving in time with each other. But here, the scrapers did not go in a circle. They went in long, narrow loop into the cut and out again at one end, and at the other end they went over the dam, over the dump. The dump was a deep ditch at the end of the cut, and crossways to it. Heavy timbers shored up the sides of the ditch and made a flat platform over the top of it. There was a hole in the middle of this platform, and earth had been graded high on each side of the ditch to make the road level with the platform. Out of the cut came the teams, steadily walking one behind another, pulling the loaded scrapers. They went up the grade to the top of the dump, and they went across the platform. They passed over the hole. one horse walking on each side of it, while into the hole the driver dumped the scraper load of dirt. Going steadily on, down the steep grade and around, they went back to the cut to fill the scrapers again. All the time, a circle of wagons was moving through the dump under the hole in the platform. Every time a scraper dumped in a load, a wagon was there under the hole to catch the dirt. Each wagon waited till 5 scraper loads had poured down into it. Then it moved on, and the wagon behind it moved under the hole and waited. It's like an assembly. You know, I keep hearing that music. Ding, 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 ding. Or, little factory music from the cartoons. The circle of wagons came out of the dump and curved back to climb up over the end of the high railroad grade that was coming toward the cut. Every wagon, as it passed over the grade, dumped its dirt and made the grade that much longer. The wagons had no wagon boxes. They were only platforms on heavy planks. To dump the dirt, the teamster turned those planks over one at a time. Then he drove onward, down over the end of the fill and back into the endless circle through the dump to be loaded again. Dust blew from the plows and the scrapers and from the dump in the end of the hill. A great cloud of dust rose up all the time, up over the sweating men and the sweating horses. The men's faces and arms were black with sunburn and dust. Their blue and gray shirts were streaked with sweat and dust. And the horses' manes and tails and hair were full of dust, and their flanks were caked with muddy sweat. Ew, it's very dirty work. They all went on, steadily and evenly, circling into the cut and out, while the plows went back and forth, and circling under the dump and back over the end to fill, and under the dump again. Is this repetitive, would you say? In any way. Bill, is it Powerhouse? Is that the factory music? It's not Mechanical Man, is it? Is it Powerhouse? That was in the cartoon with all the girders. Dun, 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 ding, ding, and they do. I think it's that. All right. What a mess. They never stopped. Back and back and back. The cut grew deeper and the fill grew longer, while the men in the teams kept on weaving their circles together, never stopping. They never miss once, Laura marveled. Every time a scraper dumps, there's a wagon underneath to catch the dirt. Well, that's the boss's job, Pa said. He makes them keep time, just like they were playing a tune. Watch the boss, and you'll see how it's done. It's pretty work. Pretty what it is. Do 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 do. On the rise above the cut, and on the end of the fill, and along the circles, the bosses stood. They watched the men and the teams and kept them moving in time. Here they slowed one team a little, and here they hurried another. No one stopped and waited. No one was late at his place. Well, I gotta build a railroad. It kind of has to go. We've seen in the movies, like, the guys laying the actual rail, and they put the ties down. And that's always, like, done like that, a synchronized thing, where the guys lay the tie, and the guys lay the rail, go clang, clank with the hammers, and it's like, synchronized. Same kind of thing. All right, so no one laid at his place. Laura heard the boss call out from the top of the cut, Boys, move along a little faster. You see, Pa said, it's nearing quitting time, and they'd all slow down a little. They can't put that over on a good boss. The whole afternoon had gone while Pa and Laura watched those circles moving, making the railroad grade. It was time to go back to the store and the shanty. Laura took one last long look, and then she had to go. On the way, Pa showed her the figures painted on the little grade stakes that were driven into the ground in a straight line where the railroad grade would be. The surveyors had driven those stakes. Oh boy, surveyors! The figures told the graders how high to build the grade on low ground and how deep to make the cuts on the high ground. The surveyors had measured it all and figured the grade exactly before anyone else had come there. Bob, my husband Bob, he did surveying back in Ohio. He did surveying. Someone said, this is subliminal hypnosis. Why do I want to make pinwheel cookies? I want to make pinwheel cookies now, too, because you said pinwheel cookies. Exhausting, I'm telling you. So, first, Laura now explains the entire making of railroads. First, someone had thought of a railroad. Then the surveyors had come out to the empty country and they had marked and measured a railroad that was not there at all. It was only a railroad that someone had thought of. Then the plowmen came up to tear up the prairie grass, and the scraper men to dig up the dirt, and the teamsters with their wagons to haul it. And all of them said they were working on the railroad. But still, the railroad wasn't there. Nothing was there yet but the cuts through the prairie swells, pieces of the railroad grade that were really only narrow, short ridges of earth, all pointing westward across the enormous grassy land. When the grade's finished, Pa said, the shovel men will come along with hand shovels, and they'll smooth the sides of the grade by hand and level it up on top. Can you imagine the enormity of this huge railroad? Remember, the railroad did get built all the way across the country by hand. I mean, we see trains all over the country, and of course, machines to build things now. They're all by hand. They graded the earth by hand. They laid the rails by hand. Imagine building like an airport by hand with like no machines. It's craziness. But they did it. And then they'll lay the rails, Laura said. Don't jump ahead so fast, Flutterbudget, Pa laughed. The railroad ties have got to be shipped out here and laid before it's time for the rails. So first the little wooden things, then the metal rails. Okay. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither's a railroad, nor anything else worth having. The sun was so low now that each prairie swell began to have its shadow lying eastward, and out of the large pale sky the flocks of ducks and the long wedges of geese were sliding down to Silver Lake to rest for the night. Quack, 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 honk, honk, honk. Okay. The clean wind was blowing now, with no dust in it, and Laura let her sunbonnet slip down her back so that she could feel the wind on her face and see the whole great prairie. Yes, because Laura's like, I can't see the whole prairie. It's no peripheral vision. And that's why Laura's always taking off her bonnet, because she wants to see. Hey, my hair looks kind of nice. I like it. I like it. I'm gonna curl it. It's awesome. Okay. There was no railroad there now, but someday the long steel tracks would lie level on the fills and through the cuts, and trains would come roaring, steaming, and smoking with speed. The tracks and the trains were not there now, but Laura could see them, almost as if they were there. Suddenly she asked, Pa, what made the very first railroad? What are you talking about? Pa said. Well, are there railroads because people think of them first when they aren't there? Yes. Pa thought a minute. That's right, he said. Yes, that's what makes things happen. People think of them first. If enough people think of a thing and work hard enough at it, I guess it's pretty nearly bound to happen, wind and weather permitting. What's that house, Pa? Laura asked. Oh, that house by the lake. They saw it in the last chapter, and she and the girls were like, what's the house? And Mary said, oh, never mind. Let's get back to the shanty. But she saw a house. What's that house, Pa? What house? Pa said. That house, the real house, Laura pointed. All this time she'd been meaning to ask Pa about that house, standing by itself on the north shore of the lake, and she'd always forgotten. Oh, that's the surveyor's house, Pa said. Are they there now? Laura asked. Well, they come and go, said Pa. They had almost reached the store, and he went on. Run along home now, Flutterbudget. I've got work to do on the books. Now you know how a railroad grade's made. Be sure to tell Mary all about it. Oh, I will, Pa, Laura promised. I'll see it out loud for her every bit. She did her best, but Mary only said, I really don't know, Laura, why you'd rather watch those rough men working in the dirt than stay here in the nice clean shanty. I finished another quilt patch while you've been idling. Okay, Mary's boring. She was kind of getting boring, like Liza with a Z. Yes, it is Liza with a Z. What good is sitting alone in your room? Yeah, Laura likes to go out. She's very outgoing, extrovert. She likes to see railroads built. Mary is like, I'm at a quilt panel. She was getting boring and stuck up before she went blind. But now, she's just like, ugh. Mary's boring. But Laura, no quilting for her, but Laura was still seeing the movement of men and horses in such perfect time that she could almost sing the tune to which they moved. That's it. I have 2 big ones. Payday tomorrow. I might read tomorrow. But tomorrow we have so many things again. I told you about this thing, Living on a Prairie. My friend Pamela Bob from New York wrote this very funny thing. She said, I've always wanted to write a web series. She's a Broadway actress. She's on Broadway. She's in Broadway shows. She's really good. And one day she said, I think I want to write a web series. Well, she loves Little House on the Prairie. She's on ahead. And she said, I'm going to write this show about this woman who's like obsessed with Little House on the Prairie. So she wrote, it was so funny. And I play her therapist. And Charlotte Stewart is in it. Miss Beadle plays a bartender. Scandalous. It's so funny. So she wrote this thing. And now she's doing a whole launch of it. She's going to put it on the internet. And she's got a bunch of us from the show. And we're all doing interviews and Q&A and stuff. And I have to be interviewed for this tomorrow, as does Charlotte Stewart, Miss Beadle. And we have to do like a whole panel thing and lots of chatter. So that's going to take like a really long time. So I will post. I might read a little bit like early because I have to like do this in the afternoon. What are we at? Tomorrow's chapter, Payday. We like Payday. That's quite a long one. So I wouldn't read 2. I might just read the 1. Maybe I will say, oh, we're doing it at noon. And we'll like do the reading noon. Or I might say, I can't do it. And then we'll do Monday. But there you go. But we show tonight at 8 o'clock California time, 11 o'clock. Somebody in Canada called and asked, wait, if you're 3 hours ahead, if the last time I did it at 5, it was 8 where you were, then it's going to be 11. It's going to be 11 p.m. in New York and all the Eastern folk, and it will be 8 p.m. here. So it's going to be late. It's the late show, but it's the 8 o'clock show for. But it's going to be awesome. It's pretty much the same thing, except I'll have a couple other questions. We'll try and make it fun, and it'll be wonderfully goofy and crazy and yay. So that's happening tonight, and we'll look at Cindy putting up the link. She's so good, and then. Yeah, we're out of bonnets. Look, I don't even have a purple one. I mean, this is lovely, but I don't even have one that matters because I feel like I've gone. They like went out in the mail. But I did tell the folks in Walnut Grove I need more, and they're trying because there's a bunch of people sewing furiously in Walnut Grove trying to make enough bonnets. So I just shipped out everybody who had a bonnet order. Your bonnet is in the mail. But soon there will be more bonnets. I have ordered more. And as soon as they come in, I put them up. So there you go. Bonnets, show, living on a prairie, things are happening. And so what are you doing tonight? I'm doing my show. See, Alison's show tonight. See, look, you guys, you asked, you answered. You're so fabulous. So I'm going to get ready. And I will see you possibly tomorrow, briefly. And I definitely see you tonight. And wash your hands, get some rest, take care, drink a lot of water. It's very good for you. Make some tea. It's also good for you. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. And be good.